In this video, I want to talk about dice in particular. There are some common misconceptions that do pop up when you talk about rolling dice. It's going to be kind of handy for when we talk about a lot of probability problems. A lot of probability problems involve dice, rolling sets of dice, decks of cards, those kind of things. And just like we had to talk about decks of cards, we got to talk a little bit about dice. So if we consider rolling two standard six-sided dice, if we think about it one way, we could think, okay, well, you can roll a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5, a 6, a 7, an 8, a 9, a 10, an 11, or a 12. And it can be tempting to say, okay, well, the probability that I roll a 6, so that would be if I roll a 3 and a 3, a 4 and a 2, a 2 and a 4, a 5 and a 1. It can be really tempting to say, okay, well, there's one possibility of 6 out of, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 possible choices. So it can be tempting to say it's 6 out of 11. However, this is incorrect because of how many different ways there are to roll dice. A 6 is more likely to appear than, say, a 2 because there are more ways for it to pop up. And we'll talk about that here in just a second. I just wanted to kind of walk through this misconception because it is a common one that does pop up. It can be tempting to look at it this way. However, this would be assuming that a 2 is just as likely as a 9 and vice versa, which we know is not the case. So if we were to think about dice in a different way, let's say we roll them two separate times. We roll the first die and then the second die. Well, on the first die, I could get a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6, and each one of those is equal chance to happen. 1 out of 6. Okay, now if I roll the second one, let's say on the first one I rolled a 1, just for the sake of the sake. And that would mean that on the second roll I could get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or a 6. And I could do this for every single one of these possible outcomes. And let me go ahead and just do that really fast. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, got an extra one there. Okay. And then we'll do it for the 4. So if I roll a 4 on the first one, then there's a possible 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or a 6 on the second one. Say I get a 5 on the first one, that'll make it to where the possibilities are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or a 6. And if we think about rolling a 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or a 6. Okay, now if I look at it this way, there are 36 total possible outcomes in this way because I've organized them in a way where everything is equally as likely to happen. I could roll a 1 and then a 1, a 1 and then a 2, a 1 and then a 3, so on and so forth. There's 36 total outcomes if we think about it in this way, where things are organized by equal likelihood of outcome. So if we think about it, let's think about the probability that we can get a 6 here. Let's think about all the possible ways we get a 6. Let's say we look at this 1 first. If I roll a 1, in order to get a 6, I would need to roll a 5. There are no other numbers on that spiral that are going to help me. Let's say I roll a 2 first. Then in order to make 6, I need a 4. If I roll a 3, well, I need a 3. If I roll a 4, I need a 2 on the second one. If I roll a 5 on the first one, I need a 1. And if I roll a 6 on my first die, there is no way I can make a 6. Because the lowest number I could roll on the second die would be a 1. And this tells me if I count these up, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 possibilities of the 36. So the probability of rolling a 6 with 2 standard die would be 5 out of 36. And if you're looking at any other kind of number that you want to roll, and a standard rolling 2 dice and then adding them up, you can do the same thing here. Think about all the possible ways you can make that number. I hope this video was helpful in just kind of guiding your thinking. In this case, it's kind of counterintuitive to how one might usually think about probability and statistics. And it comes from that idea that if we think about the outcomes of rolling 2 six-sided die, there are some outcomes that are more likely than others, when we add them up. And it just kind of happens to be that way because there are more ways to, say, roll a 7 than there are to roll a 2.